Now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline via Zoom is the host of Hockey Morning in Provo and voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell. Greg, first and foremost, would love to know, how are your Calgary Flames holding up in the midst of this modified National Hockey League bubble?
After last night, really, really well. Big win for the Flames yesterday. Beat the Jets 6-2. Have a 2-1 lead in this best of 5. Hoping to finish things out tomorrow. It's been good.
That's exciting. And another professional league that's figuring it out, making it work, right? Hopefully we can make it work with college football. Day one with BYU football yesterday. Typically, this is a massive celebratory day where we're out at practice. It's good to be out in the heat. We're seeing the team for the first time formally as they kind of get into the season. Yeah, there's sort of this different vibe, obviously, with who's BYU going to play and is the season going to happen at all. So what were some of your day one takeaways from BYU football fall camp?
Well, I had to go back and listen to it again this morning to make sure that I heard it right. But when Matt Bushman says, if we get a season, it'll be a bonus, it kind of puts it, into, pretty sharp relief where this thing really is. There's still enough eggshells to be crushed here that no one's really counting on anything right now, to the point where they're happy to be practicing and considering the season itself to be a bonus. And here we are, roughly 4 weeks from when the season should be kicking off, and that's how the guys are talking.
Greg, what do you make of all of this scheduling movement with the announcements from the American Athletic Conference this morning that they will go 8 conference games plus 4, and then the Mountain West, according to Brett McMurphy, will go 8 conference games plus 2. How do you think this impacts BYU's hopeful and potential schedule for 2020?
Well, I think if BYU wants to put together a schedule of 10 to 12 games, they'll have enough teams to do that with. And right now, that's kind of what we're seeing, right? We're seeing that it's 10, 11, or 12, depending on your league. Some mixture of conference only to conference plus a few. And so I think it's rarer that that teams and conferences are expecting to play a full 12-game schedule. I think there are still a couple of leagues trying to get to 12, but it seems more likely that 10 or 11 is the number that they're hoping for, building in bye weeks and kind of expecting interruptions. But I think if BYU wanted to, again, cobble together that many games, they'd find enough takers to do so. The real question comes, from which leagues these teams will come. We hear the Mountain West, of course, going to its model, which would allow for 2 non-league games. BYU already has multiple Mountain West Conference teams on this year's schedule, with 3 already on the slate. Again, if BYU wanted to even keep it geographically concise, they could probably do that as well. I don't think that filling the schedule is going to be the hard part this season. I think for everybody, it's going to be, how deep into it can you get?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think we're doing it backwards, right? We're trying to fill out the schedule, and then it feels like they're kind of trying to figure out how this is going to work in season. It's like, shouldn't you figure out how you can practice and then how you can play, and then the schedule happens after? I don't see the point of scheduling if you're not going to play, but I realize you have to do it. So maybe
it's all happening concurrently. I mean, they are trying to essentially start driving on the freeway while, the asphalt is still curing.
It's crazy.
By the way, I'm not a civil engineer. I may have used incorrect terminology.
You are civil, though.
You know where I'm coming from. They are, trying to figure out, the best way to execute the protocols that have been put in place by, well-meaning and well-educated people, while at the same time trying to give, student athletes a season to play. But we're just, day by day and hour by hour, we're just kind of being introduced to either existing or new wrinkles or hurdles to overcome just to get to the start line.
So if we do have a schedule, we're hoping, I don't know, a couple Big 12, Mountain West, keep those games with Boise State, Utah State, San Diego State, keep Houston, maybe a few more AAC games could be in the mix since they announced 8+4. What do you think of maybe adding a Memphis, a Cincinnati, a Navy, and so on, if that's a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, clearly you're going to want to try and see if there's any P5 possibilities. We already know right now that if there were, they'd come on the road. They wouldn't get home dates with those leagues. And then you look for prominent G5s. And then after that, you kind of go down to the FBS independents that are kind of the last safety net. Of course, we find out today that, one of those is no longer an option. And I guess the bigger question there would be for UConn, have they played their life? When will they play again?
Right.
That program was struggling to begin with. We'll just take the legs out from that program, and not just UConn, but other schools, I think, from different divisions might be looking at this pandemic and how they come out of it, and really where their programs are on the other side.
Greg, the biggest question marks are overwhelmingly on what we're talking about. Is there going to be a season? How many games will BYU play? What happens if somebody gets a positive test on the team? How do you quarantine? How do you disseminate that information? But for the moment, let's focus on the actual football players. And what questions do you have about BYU on the field going into the season? What's the biggest question mark you have in terms of personnel and what you're going to see on the field?
Well, it may or may not be the biggest question, but I think one of the questions that I think needs to be answered is who will be the workhorse running back. And as deep as the room is, and as good as Kalani feels about the room, I'd really like a star and a stud to emerge. I'd like to have a guy that you can count on to be 1,000-yard back. I think 1,000-yard backs tend to equate to pretty good seasons for BYU, and it's been a while. And it's not so much the guy as it is the productivity from the team and the point score. But I really do think that a standout and a workhorse and a go-to and a star and a stud, emerging would be a great thing for the program, regardless of who it is. Identifying that person, getting them the requisite number of carries, and then hoping for the requisite amount of health to keep that guy on the field. And more than anything else, that's maybe been the biggest problem, right, with either running backs or quarterbacks. It's just who stays healthy enough to be the guy. And then that's an important part of the equation too.
And when we say health, for the first time this year, we're going to actually throw in being sick into that equation, right? It won't just be a dislocated shoulder or a sprained knee. It's they had a positive test. They can't play, so who knows? Is Lopini Katoa the man in front there that has the best chance of that, in your opinion?
I'd say right now, yeah. If Sione Finau hadn't gotten hurt, I think Sione showed, incredible potential and could have, assumed that position. But I think of the guys who are healthy and ready, you'd look there. Although he's just a freshman coming in, I'm hoping that down the line, you talk about a kid like say, Bruce Garrett seemed like a real, an exciting, long-term look. And I'll be curious to see what all these guys look like when we actually do get a chance to lay eyes on these fellas, and who knows when that will actually be. But Lopini, I've already tweeted about his great touchdown rate. I mean, he doesn't need a lot of touches to find the end zone, yet he's never had a workhorse load, for 12 games in the season. Could he handle it? Would he be that guy? History has shown that if you give him the rock, he knows what to do with it. And so he's got a pretty good past history and record with the reps he's gotten.
The voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell, with us on BYU Sports Nation. Greg, I have mixed emotions when I look at the roster for BYU because I see, in my opinion, the most experienced and veteran squad from top to bottom that Kalani Sitake has had. Maybe you differ with me on that take, but I just feel like there's a ton of experience, and I think, man, what a waste it would be if you couldn't use this experience that they've been building for because of COVID-19. But where do you stand on the depth of BYU football and how it ranks in the Kalani Sitake era?
Well, I think into a fifth season, they are where you'd hope to be after you've kind of gone through an entire, quote unquote class. Classes mean different things when it comes to BYU in terms of when you actually have completed your class. But heading into season 5, I don't think it's a stretch at all to say it's the deepest and most talented bunch. And, Isaiah Kofusi was talking about at least defensively, thinking about having, 2 and 3 starters potentially at essentially every spot across the board. And that's day one optimism. But it's the kind of situation where you can look at multiple guys and say, I could see him getting most of the reps. I could see him getting most of the reps and not get much of an argument on that. And so, yes, very deep, deepest probably of Kalani's tenure, and similar to the Mark Pope situation, to have that group last year, as good as they were and primed to do such great things in the tournament, not get a chance to show it. What a great shame that was. And this year, it's already got an asterisk, right? I think we already kind of feel that this is not going to be a normal season by any stretch. And so just how much will BYU get out of this season remains to be seen. But man, you'd like it to approach as much normalcy as possible, just to see if BYU can prove the kind of things we expect them to be able to prove because of that depth and talent that they've accumulated. Now, the NCAA, coming out today, has given a bit of a window to extend the eligibility and forestall some of these careers. They've allowed COVID-19 opt-outs. And I think in that situation, you keep your scholarship and they'll be expected to retain eligibility, one would presume, if they opt out for that reason. And so who knows how many teams will find themselves maybe hitting a bit of a reset with at least some of their personnel for next season.
Greg, whether it's Stillwater, Oklahoma, or Ames, Iowa, or Fort Worth, Texas, or wherever on the map, I sincerely hope we get to hear your voice broadcasting Cougar football from whichever the location is where BYU could potentially start.
Or Provo,
Or Provo.
Maybe they start at home. Who knows? But it'll be nice to see games back on the schedule. It'll be even nicer to get to a game day, and who really knows, what the games will truly look and sound like and feel like, presuming we get there. But, we're all in the same boat in this, guys. We've all got a job to do, and it revolves around, these student athletes, their teams, their coaches, and these games. And we're all still in limbo, waiting for some kind of definition and hoping that something positive comes on the other end of it.
Greg, we appreciate the real talk and the time that you spent with us today. And we're going to take the positive vibes from your Calgary Flames and hope that this means good things ahead for all sports.
Whatever works. Good to be with you guys. See you soon.
All right, Greg Wrubell on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, you know why, we show how.
I go 26